What he's about to share here is by far the most important thing you will hear in sports today. There was a conference call amongst the owners. Let's talk about it.
Very rare to have a conference call like this. Also potentially historic, because one of the things about this I've been told, everything is on the table. Any option that you want to bring up, whether it comes to suspending play, whether it comes to moving fans from arenas, whether it comes to relocating games to neutral sites, all of that stuff is possible. The second thing that I think is key, the NBA is making decisions with the player safety number one, because they want to protect their players, of course. But if a player were to be diagnosed with coronavirus, my feel is that the league would have to suspend operations. So they want to protect the players, protect that situation, but there's so many moving parts here, including local governments. If the governments make this inevitable, where they say you can't, like they have done in San Jose, it's going to be taken out of the owner's hands. And they have to come up with an action plan, and they have to decide what that's going to be today.
And so who is leading this? You were telling us in the meeting earlier that there are, I don't want to say dissenting voices, but there is some debate as to whether it is the league that should be making these decisions or they should just rely on government to make decisions.
The league has tried hard to get a consensus, and the difficulty has been they can't get it because there's no action plan here. They didn't develop this. They can't say, well, we did this back in 1987 or what have you. It's all new. And the issues that are in front of them are safety, absolutely. But two, revenue. That has to be considered. The concept that the league would potentially play playoff games without fans would be hundreds of millions of dollars in risk revenue that could, frankly, collapse the salary cap next year because all of those numbers have been computed in. These are things that are the second and third level decisions that come down the line, but have to be discussed so they have an action plan going forward. Sports in the NBA is probably going to be different going forward and in the very short-term future.
And it's as soon as by the end of this day, I think it's important to continue to point that out. You told us something in our meeting this morning that I'm sure many people didn't know. I didn't know it. How did China react to this in January?
Yeah, and I think that's somewhat instructive. In China, when this became a major issue in January, they shut the Chinese Basketball Association down. They told everybody to go home, including a lot of players who are Americans and Canadian players, and they have not done anything in 2 months. And they are just now beginning the process of having the players come back with the idea that they could restart the season in early April. That is something that the NBA is going to have to take a look at and study, because just in Los Angeles alone, the playoff games that would potentially would be worth over $100 million with the Lakers and Clippers just in those playoff revenue. And I realize it's not all about revenue, it's about safety, but the owners at some point have to make a judgment here. And those are the things that are going to be discussed today and over the next 2 days.
Matt, you've been in touch with current players. What are they saying about this?
I was at Draymond Green's birthday party this weekend, and it wasn't even a topic of discussion. Guys aren't worried about it. It's not something that's being talked about. Some people think it's an overreaction. You know, you hear a lot of different conflicting reports where, you know, who's susceptible to get it, who's not susceptible to get it. But overall, I think I'm along the same lines as LeBron. To have to play in front of an empty arena would hopefully be the last possible option. I think the quality of play would be down. I think the excitement would be down. I mean, at this point in the season, you need some kind of motivation to get going. And if you're playing in a 30,000 empty seat arena, where's the motivation?
Well, if I said your money was going to potentially be down next year because of it too? Does that have any effect?
I mean, yeah, but at the same time, I mean, like I said, we want to put on a show for our fans, for our family, and for our teammates, and taking the fans away is a huge part of what we do it for.
I asked this question seriously. As a player, if you were an active player right now, and they gave you the option between playing games in empty arenas or actually halting the season,
I would rather wait.
You would rather not play?
I think a majority of the players would just rather wait until we figure out exactly what's going on.
I think it's important to realize that there are two separate things going here. There is the virus, which has, you know, many people paying attention to it, government and doctors, and then there's the reaction to the virus. They are two separate things. They're related, but they're separate. Yeah. And if you're looking at what's happening, Greeny just read all of these things, all of these people, all these leagues that are changing their operations. The NBA is going to be changing their operations effective immediately. That is not under debate. That's going to happen. It's just the extent of what their operation change is going to be.
And the complicated, I'm sorry, but the complicated part, guys, we're just going to stay with this, okay? The complicated part of this is that you pointed out earlier, there is no handbook to this, which means there is no end date. I've had people tell me, again, I'm not, the last thing anyone should be doing is speculating about this, but there are people who will tell you that this is something that is going to stretch well beyond sports and in the world of business, well into the fall. So the NBA, if it were to suspend operations now, it's not like you could look at this thing and say, okay, we'll hold everything for 2 weeks,
Right.
and then we'll come back and pick everything up again. There's no way of knowing.
Yeah, and the other thing is that when I talked to teams yesterday, they described the NBA as dealing with the individual crisis that is in front of them right now, which is to make a plan for action today. The concept that they have some sort of break in case of emergency plan about suspending the season for 2 months or what have you down the line, they don't have that. That's going to take time to develop. And that's one of the reasons it's so challenging and so difficult, because there isn't any experience level with this. And the NBA's interest in talking to health experts has just given them conflicting information.
And so who at the end of the day, and I grant that I may be putting you in an impossible position here, who will make this decision? I mean, Adam Silver's name will be on the decision, but how are they going about making this
I think that's one of the things that was talked about today, but there is a possibility that Adam Silver could essentially just declare martial law and make his own decisions and say, make decisions for the best of the league. Probably not going to come to that. He works with the owners, he works with the Players Association, but decisions will be made in the short-term future that will be sort of an edicts as opposed to let's have a vote on it.
So to recap, by the end of this day, you're telling us that any and all of these things are on the table.
Everything is on the table. That's the most important thing I kept hearing yesterday.
And the call is, we know what?
It's this afternoon sometime. It'll probably be a long call.
All right, we will be all over this for you, and obviously you'll want to follow Brian Windhorst and everyone at SportsCenter and everyone at ESPN on what could be an historic day for the NBA and for sports in America.